Walk with me, Sam. But were the Americans going to fight a war with Britain? That question was still being debated down in Philadelphia. One early morning in June, John and Samuel Adams met to talk over current events. I walked with Mr. Samuel Adams in the State House yard, remembered John, for a little exercise in fresh air before the hour of Congress. The Adams cousins knew that many members of the Continental Congress were not too thrilled about Ethan Allen's Fort Ty attack. These members were still hoping to find a peaceful solution to their conflict with the British government. In fact, Congress actually ordered Allen to make a careful list of all the items found at Fort Ticonderoga. That way, they could give everything back to the British if war was avoided. John and Samuel Adams thought this was ridiculous. Wasn't it obvious by now that King George was never going to compromise? It was time for the 13 colonies to join together, form one big army, and fight for independence. In fact, John had decided that this was the day that he would try to convince Congress to pick a leader for the new American army. But who should that leader be? He wanted Samuel's advice. The cousins knew their friend John Hancock expected to be offered the job. And Hancock was definitely one of the most famous and popular Patriot leaders. The thing is, Hancock didn't know anything about leading an army. That could be a problem. Besides, the cousins agreed, the American army should represent all regions of the colonies. The perfect thing would be to pick a leader from Virginia, the biggest of the southern colonies. That would help unite Americans in the long fight ahead. If only there was someone from Virginia, someone known and respected by everyone, someone with army experience, someone smart, tough, committed to the cause. John Adams loses a friend. When Congress assembled, I rose in my place, said John Adams. It was time, Adams told Congress, to create a Continental Army with soldiers from all 13 colonies. And it was time to elect a leader of the army. Members leaned forward in their seats. Who was Adams about to name? John Hancock listened with a proud grin on his face. He really thought he was about to hear his name. And John Adams enjoyed toying with Hancock a little bit. He made sure to keep an eye on Hancock's face as he named the man he believed should command the Continental Army, George Washington. Hancock's smile collapsed in an instant. I never remarked a more sudden and striking change of countenance, facial expression, Adams said. Then Samuel Adams announced that he too supported Washington, which upset Hancock even more. Mr. Hancock never loved me so well after this event as he had done before, John Adams remembered. Meanwhile, George Washington jumped up and ran out of the room. He wanted to give everyone a chance to talk about him without worrying they might hurt his feelings. So Washington waited outside while the other members of Congress decided whether or not he should lead the American Revolution. George Washington, love poet. Was George Washington, age 43, about to be offered the opportunity of a lifetime? Or was he about to be handed an impossible job? Possibly both? He must have wondered about this as he waited in the library. As a boy in Virginia, George had dreamed of becoming a military hero. He even tried to run away from home and join the British Navy when he was 14. But his mother discovered the plan and refused to let him go. She was a very protective mom, and a bit stingy, too. Young George once asked her for money so he could take music lessons. She offered to lend him the cash. So George never learned to play the violin, but he did spend some time working on his love poetry. Here's part of a letter he sent to Frances Alexander, a young woman he admired. Notice that the first letters of each line spell out her name. From your bright, sparkling eyes, I was undone. Rays, you have more transparent than the sun. Amidst its glory in the rising day, none can you equal in your bright array. On June 16, 1775, George Washington sat down to write a very different letter. This time he was writing to his wife, Martha, or as he called her in his letters, my dear Patsy. Congress had just made it official. George Washington was the commander of the new Continental Army. I am now set down to write you on a subject which fills me with inexpressible concern, wrote George to Martha. It has been determined in Congress that the whole army raised for the defense of the American cause shall be put under my care. Why was Washington filled with concern? How would you feel if the future of an entire country were placed in your hands? Washington told Congress, I this day declare, with utmost sincerity, I do not think myself equal to the command. Young George. But there was no time for doubts or worries. Washington packed up his things and headed north to join the army, which was camped outside of Boston. While he was on his way, a messenger brought Washington some urgent news. A major battle had just been fought in Boston. When he heard the report, Washington said, Wait a second, let's check on the battle first. Then we'll hear what Washington said about it.